everybody. Welcome to Truth Teller Tales. I'm Ellen. And as always, I'm dedicated to interviewing those folks who were truth seekers and now are truth tellers and are such warriors during this most incredible time to be alive. And I'm so excited tonight that I'm interviewing somebody who has been in this fight for years and I've admired for a long time. And he is a warrior on so many different levels, and I can't wait to talk to him about all of it. Welcome, Scott McKay, Patriot Streetfighter. Yeah, how are you?
What a pleasure to be here tonight. How
Yay!
how much does my life suck? I get to hang out with pretty ladies like you and talk patriot shit.
I know this is going to be so fun. Yay! I'm just so excited because you're one of those OGs for me. When I started consuming all this stuff and going to the reawakening things, and you've just always been so kind of, hate to say it, badass. Can I say that? But
Hey, to my channel.
and so this is just so cool for me, just to be able to talk to you and hear your story. Thank you so much for doing this, Scott. And for people that don't know I don't think there are a lot, but tell them what you're doing right now.
Uh, Pretty much what I've been doing for the last 5 years with the podcast and a radio show. Done traveling for the year. I did a tour this year throughout the summer from June through September. We were on the road the whole time, and that was pretty cool because I've been focusing on different aspects of Patriot Street Fighter. We have, a couple warfare platforms. Obviously, this is one, the information warfare machine we built here. The economic warfare platform, Operation Tomahawk, showing people that we've got to defund these cabal-powered companies that are selling us everything that's toxic, neurotoxic, poisons, carcinogens. And so we have a one-stop shop for that. It isn't us. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's been around 40 years at all non-toxic products. So we, of course, aligned with them for that warfare platform. That's economic warfare against those criminals, as they put against us. So we're using their weapons against them. And then, of course, tactical civics has been a big one in bringing back the constitutional county grand juries. So throughout the country, or whatever I'm aligned with, Sasha and I are focused on the New Earth Project in Tennessee. And that's been pretty much the year, being on the road for those things. And now I'm sort of kind of trying to hit a soft landing here so I can just stay home for a bit. Doesn't seem to work. I got to go to an Army Navy game this weekend, which is a privilege, but I can't ever seem to stay home and catch my breath, no matter what I say. But it's all good because I get to be with the people that I love, and that's the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put all the links for all those things down in the details too. So, you really are, there are people like you that, have been in the fight for years, but a lot of them have gone away. And you are, again, a warrior on so many different levels. And you're just here still fighting. And I just admire that a lot. And so I would love to hear, where you started, where you were born, your life growing up, and kind of what makes Scott Scott.
Okay, well, I did it all by myself, and I'm kidding. I've had a lot of sledgehammers to the forehead in terms of lessons. I guess I'm a slow learner, but I grew up in a lower middle class family, Central PA, fairly depressed economy forever. I mean, when there's economic downfalls in the U.S., we don't notice it. It's always been economically depressed where I grew up, but a great upbringing, quintessential American town. Middle class America, no car door ever locked, keys left in the ignition, going to the store. You grew up the same way. And that's how life was for me. We didn't have a lot of money like anybody else. Like I said, we just, it was that kind of an era. And we made our fun out of anything that was available, a soup can, playing kick the can or dodgeball or stickball, whatever. And, relatively normal upbringing. I had great parents. I'm a product of my upbringing. The impression that the two greatest impressions on me, my family had, my mom and dad had, was my mother was always the life of the party. Just she loved to laugh. She could talk to anybody. If you came to our house and it's the first time she ever met you, it was if she's always known you, and they felt the same way. Like, come on in here, you know. And if they came to the bank to get their checks cashed, and a young kid, she's nosy. She was the best broadcast system on earth. I wish she was alive. I'd turn her over to DARPA right now, because you tell her something, doesn't matter if it's top secret. Before the phone is off back on the hook, she's calling somebody else. You won't believe what I just. So that was my mom. There's no such thing as a secret. But she just had that about her nature, that anybody, it doesn't matter if it's a complete stranger steps in that circle, they instantly feel comfortable. And I've had that said to me over the course of my life. When I meet a new person, hang out with them, if it was a new girl that I went on a date with, they always seem to say the same, I just feel like I've known you my whole life, because I'm I guess comfortable with not trying to create a different image, and I think that's a problem in the dating world. People go out on a date and they bring their A game, and they're fashioning somebody that they're not. Eventually they're discovered both sides, and they can't figure out why it didn't work. How about just being yourself?
Exactly. That's right.
You are perfect the way you are. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you have, what you don't have, what you look like. You are the image and likeness of your creator. You are perfect as you are. Stop trying to be somebody else. Now, these weren't lessons taught to me. It was observation. My father, the general, he was tough. He was a father that I wouldn't want to repeat the upbringing with the exception that his sense of patriotism and honor and integrity was just something that was unspoken, but it was always doing the right thing. And these things you don't think about, what am I learning growing up? But as you grow up, you become like them. And I look back, and the value of it all was, always do better than a good job, Scott. Always do better than a good job. If you borrow a tool from somebody, when you take it back, you give it back to them in better condition than you got it. Respecting people's property. I guess I've adopted this. He would say, there's only one thing that I hate more than a thief, and that's a liar. And so I don't tolerate liars in my world. If somebody lies to me one time, they lost my trust. It doesn't mean that they're not in my world. It's just I put people in boxes, like this box close to my heart. There's people in there, and there's other boxes. This person is dishonest, but I like him. This person over here, whatever they are, I just have boxes, and I accept people for who they are. This is the most prized box. If you leave this one, people switch boxes all the time, but you never get back in this box with me. If you lie to me or dishonest, I'll probably still love you in many cases. We could still be friends, but that's where you'll never get to the core of closeness to my soul, because you're a dishonest person. I mean, that, in my opinion, is the weakest character trait. The most terrible character trait there is dishonesty, your deception. So those are the best things that came from my upbringing. Went to normal high school, was an athlete, played sports.
And that's what I was wondering. So, what were you like in school? Did you have siblings? Were you the guy that asked questions? Were you the athlete? Did you get motivation from coaches? I mean, what was that like for you?
Yeah. I have four sisters. I grew up,
Oh,
four sisters. How exciting that was. But don't feel bad, because they all turned out okay. They're fine. They survived that. I was very, very fortunate, I think, because I had four sisters. I have and of course, with my mother in the house, my father, he worked a lot, so he wasn't always there. So, it was 5-1. I was a minority in a sorority, so to speak.
yes.
So I think there's a certain level of respect that I have for women, because I've been surrounded by them my whole life. In fact, like at my age today, I don't have any children of my own, but as I became older, I just learned to adore these little creatures running around, especially little girls. So when we do events, there's always, little ones around, and they want to get pictures or, do an autograph or whatever. And I just love being around them. And like the little girls, I got to kiss them on the cheek. They're just adorable little creatures. And I just endearing. If I could have some children, most people would say you'd want a son. I'm like, nah, I kind of think I want two little girls.
Yes.
Because of the nature of the being itself. I was always respectful. Again, just out of the example of my family. And as an athlete, basketball was my best sport. People find it hard to believe,
Okay.
having been on a national bodybuilding stage, but that's my best sport. Played football. Was the skinniest, weakest guy on the team. We were rank ordered.
Wow.
Yeah, my sophomore year in high school. We going into my sophomore year, we had to lift weights at the weight room at the high school under the direction of the coaches if we wanted to get a uniform and play football. And I'm like, um, I can't do that. I'll become too muscle bound and it'll throw off my jump shot, which is ridiculous. That wasn't going to happen, but too much of an MTP back then, probably. But so of course I had to do that. And so when we were rank ordered at the end of that first summer before school started, we had strength and agility testing. And that experience changed my life forever, because when we're all gathered around, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and we're looking at the rank order on the wall, everybody's kind of razzing each other where they ended up or where they didn't. The number one guy, everybody expected he would be the strength and agility champion. His name's on a plaque on the wall under all the prior strength and agility champions, and he gets that trophy at the football banquet, all that. I didn't have those aspirations. Because I couldn't find my name on the list. And after the crowd cleared away, I'm like, I can't believe it. They forgot me. They didn't put me on. So I went really slow this time, the whole way down the list, and it went clear down to the bottom. And there I was, 67 out of 67. So, and people remember who's first and who's last. That's all they remember. So I, that was a reckoning, because I remember standing right there. I was like humiliated. And I was like, I was saying in my own mind, this is never going to happen to me again. And so in the off season, after getting pounded like Rudy on the field I was 135-pound defensive end going up against 260-pound pulling guards and getting crushed. But I jumped back up after the beating, and because I just was more afraid of being nothing than being hurt. And so I started hitting the weights in the off season in my basement. I got little plastic weights with the concrete in them and a little bar and a bench. And I just went at it for the next couple of years. And then by the time my senior year, I had 4 school records, strength and agility records, and ended at the top. So that was an amazing
Wow.
transition for me. And I think I only gained by maybe 30 pounds in that time. I was 165 pounds, setting deadlifting records. The guys that were 270, 280 couldn't do what I was doing. Don't
Wow.
ask me why. I'm not like gifted in that way, but so that was kind of a marker for me. And that marker then set the stage when I was out of high school. In the gym, a friend of mine came back from the Army, and he was a big dude and wanted to get into a bodybuilding contest. And I graduated at 16, I think. Maybe I was 17. I can't remember. I graduated younger than most. But anyway, so I decided, yeah, I'll win this men's bodybuilding show, because they didn't have a division for teenagers. And scared to death, stepped on that stage and did my thing, and ended up winning 5th place it's called the
Oh,
open class.
wow.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing that happened. And the guy that was much, much bigger than me, who was my mentor and the one who came back from the Army on break, or whatever you call it, leave. He was so pissed. He walked out of that gymnasium and he never spoke to me until I met him 25 years later, I think. So yeah, it's a kind of painful experience, and I was really hurt by that. But I went on to the national stage, and was on a national bodybuilding stage. Had a great career, getting ready to turn the corner back in 1990. And I dedicated my life to, I want to be a competitive pro. And that's the life that I wanted. So it was full time. My entire life was owned by the sport, and it was my dedication and commitment to do something for me would have been extraordinary. I mean, I didn't realize I had the genetic capabilities to do what I did. And that's my lesson
Mhm.
to most people, Ellen, is you need to hang yourself out there and go for it. Absolutely go for it. Because had I not done that, I would have never known that I was blessed with these genetics, that I could use dumbbells, barbells, resistance machine to on this canvas craft this look, this work of art in a way that was championship form and was pleasing to the eye. And in that sport, a lot of guys are big, bulky, musty. They move on stage like that. They don't look graceful. They can't flow like ballet, a grace to
Mhm.
move into different positions. But those things for me just kind of came natural. And and competitive bodybuilding, those successes put me into a position I could see up out over, whatever was the distant horizon, trying to find some direction in life to build a life. Because, in an area I grew up in, there's no opportunity, uh, no money to start a business, no contacts. You really had to dig any opportunity out of the ground with your bare hands, and that's all I
Yeah.
had. And so it was really that sport that kind of kicked it into gear to get me starting to actually believe in myself. That was the big thing. It made me believe. And I think that's why I have so much belief in people, of what we can accomplish together in this nation to take it back. Is I know where I came from. I know who I am. I mean, I get you've been to events and you can see what happens when I'm around a crowd, and they're excited. They're putting me up on this high pedestal, and my gift is putting them at ease, number one. And I just like people to be around me for a little bit, because it's successful when they walk away saying, he really ain't all that. I'm like, exactly. That's a right. Imagine what you can do if you realize you don't have to be, in fact, I'll tell you a quick story and then we'll shift gears. But I've told this a couple times. When I was in, Sasha Stone and myself were on tour in 2021, on the first tour after the state Robert David Steele split happened. And Sasha, Lee Dundas, myself, Sandra Rose, and Scotty Sachs went on our own tour because we had my bus. And we pulled into Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And I think it was Coeur d'Alene. I can't remember the exact location. Might have been Columbus. But after we do the event and they're outdoors in the sun, in 100 degrees all summer long on tour, but it was dry weather, so that was a good thing. And we would do the event, outdoor stages, all that. And then after that, people just like to line up for miles, by the bus and take pictures. So that alone would take 3-4 hours sometimes. And this one event, the last lady in line she reminded me of you, very beautiful, looked well to do. I could tell as she started to speak to me, she was, looked to be fairly wealthy and extremely well connected. But she said to me, she proceeded to tell me, said, Scott, I kept moving to the back of the line the whole time because I just wanted to, I know how busy you are and you have limited time, but I want to just have a couple minutes of your time after, or when nobody else was around, so I could have a couple more minutes. So she said, she told me about her circle of influence, and she's extremely well connected in Washington, D.C. at the high levels of the political power structure. In Hollywood, she's, extremely well connected. And she says, I only tell you that for one reason. She said, because I've never been starstruck in my whole life until right now. And I just started laughing. I put my hand on her shoulder and I said, well, I said, you're going to get over that in about 3 minutes flat. Trust me. We just laughed. And
Oh,
it was so endearing to me. And so
oh,
that's kind of set the track for, as far as my younger years, what got me to, at least coming out of high school and setting my course for life. That's really what was
yeah.
all about.
And so that's so interesting, you going from 67th, but that as a sophomore, I guess, and that kind of was the motivation that who knew that that was going to take you through a bodybuilding career. I mean, that's pretty wild to me,
Yeah,
what God does in our lives, and sets that little tap on our shoulder without us even knowing.
true.
That's just so amazing to me, and then so during that time, because of course, I've heard about your dad and things, which I want you to tell too,
Mhm.
but how was he with your bodybuilding? Was he good with that?
He was disconnected. My dad wasn't an athlete; he was military. So he
Mm,
didn't really relate to that. My dad never came to my sporting events. He was a very introverted guy, believe it or not, and he never seemed to be comfortable around people. I mean, if he was somewhere where he had to be, he could talk to anybody. You'd walk up to him primarily. He wasn't a guy who would engage. I mean, we're very opposite that way in the end. But I'm probably a little bit of that myself. But he just wasn't into that sports thing. So that was a little painful for me, obviously, because when your dad
mhm.
doesn't come to see you. Then he had a heart attack at 30. I was actually in ninth grade, and he had a disabling heart attack.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
at 38 years old. Yeah, he was, he was a very, very hard worker. He was what's it, the head foreman at a large trucking company that kept the tractor trailers moving and transport. And so he was kind of guy that instead of being in the office, handling the shift of all the workers, my dad would have on a pair of coveralls and he'd go out and get under these trucks and work on them in addition to doing the office work. He's one of those guys, he doesn't sit around and at the
Mhm.
desk. So, but one night he had these chest pains and was going up the steps to lay down on his cot in there, and boom, we nearly lost him. But what happened was he had arteriosclerosis, and it's like a bigenerational thing. And so from that point forward, he just, I mean, he was on disability from that day forward, and I saw how over time how that just wrecked his self-esteem because he's not a producer anymore, and he was a workaholic. He's a very hard worker. Went in the military. My dad was in the army in the 50s in Germany, and because he was such a great leader and a great soldier, the Army offered him an appointment to West Point. It didn't come from who he knew in Congress or getting letters written. The Army wanted him to go to West Point, and he turned it down
Oh,
because
wow.
he didn't have the confidence academically. And they said, "Don't worry about that. We'll put you in a prep school for 2 years, and by the time you're done with prep school, you'll be fine. You'll absolutely be fine getting through West Point." And he said, "I thought about 2 years there. West Point, 4 years. You're now 6 years, and then you got 6 year Army commitment, 12 years." And at that time, he's shaving out of his helmet. He was a tank driver, but he would shave out of his helmet and shoveling his tank out of snow in the wintertime in Germany. I guess it didn't register when you're an officer. Life is a bit different for you, but. My grandmother told me she cried and cried. She's getting calls from Germany from the company commander. "Please help your son understand what this means. It's the opportunity of the lifetime, and he is the right guy." So he didn't get it. Biggest regret of his life that he didn't take the opportunity, but he brought the Army home. So I went to boot
Mhm.
camp for 18 years. It wasn't easy.
Wow.
Wasn't easy.
That's a wild story.
Mhm.
So what made you end your bodybuilding career, and what was the next thing you decided to do?
Well, I was going into Penn State at the time when I was coming out of high school, and I was looking into ROTC Air Force because I took some type of battery of tests, and it seemed like aviation I had maybe the framework or thinking for, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. But I'm young. I go to ROTC. I find out I got to have a short haircut and wear Army camos on campus. I'm like, chicks aren't going to be impressed by that at all. I can't do that. So, anyways, I was already into the world of bodybuilding. And so, but it never left me. And because of my dad and his love for the military, um, I was in, God, I was about a dozen years into my career in bodybuilding. And then one day I was sitting outside of Gold's Gym in Venice Beach, California, with a couple of my buddies from Penn State. We were all on the bodybuilding stage, and I was the one that pretty much had, the genetics and the capabilities to turn the corner and go the distance. And one day I just said to these guys, I said, "You know what? I'm done. I'm retiring." They're like, "What are you talking about?" I said, I'm done." I said, "I want to be a Navy or Marine pilot, fighter pilot." They're like, "You're out of your effing mind." I'm like, they thought I was like nuts. And about 3 days after that, I was on a plane back home to Pennsylvania. And I was, walking into a friend of mine, Diane, her name is Diane. Her brother was a top Harrier pilot in the Marine Corps. And so she was a friend of mine, and she set up a meeting at the Marines, and I talked to the Marines, and then I went to the Navy. And the Marines were kind of what you'd expect the Marines to be. Um, the uh, the lieutenant was kind of arrogant, basically a VMI graduate, talking about how he
Mhm.
could shoot the eye out of a deer on the run at 400 yards and all this stuff. And I think when he looked at me when I walked in, I just said I'd like to set up, a time to take my AQTFAR exams for aviation. And now here I walk in, a 265-pound muscle bound musclehead, and I'm sure he's just looking at me like, "I guess another guy saw Top Gun." I
Yeah.
was like, could see that look on his face. So he said, "I think the Navy would be a better fit for you." So I went up to the Navy. This guy, Captain Shirley, greatest guy, walked in. He's had his head down working, and he said, "Can I help you?" and didn't even look up at me. And I said, yeah, I said, I'd like to talk about taking my AQTFAR exams for aviation, naval aviation. And he looked up at me and he saw me. Here's the Hulk. And he just, kind of gave me a once over and he said, okay, great. When do you want to take them? And I said, well, obviously I got some work to do, Captain. I got to trim off a little bit of weight unless I want to ride in the back of a cargo plane. But I said, need some time to prepare and study, whatever. He said, okay, when you want to schedule, just give me a call, come back or whatever. So about 8 or 9 months later, I spent the next 8 or 9 months on a stationary bike in the morning at 5 a.m., just killing myself, burning all of this muscle off. It was as hard to get it off as it was to put it on. And so,
Wow.
I go from eating 8,000, 9,000 calories a day down to 2,000, which would, for me was starvation. And so I stripped all this off and I went back to studying all the things that I did from algebra, in eighth grade, ninth grade, geometry, trigonometry, calculus, integral calculus, all these, mathematics and sciences. I started to retrain myself because I'd forgotten all this shit since I was a kid, in school. I had to teach myself jet propulsion, aerodynamics. And I had a friend of mine was in court. She knew somebody at Corpus Christi, Texas, at the base there who was in intermediate jet training. And they somehow scarfed some of those manuals to me and I could study. And so I taught myself aerodynamics, jet propulsion, electrical wiring. That was really tough. But I
Wow.
prepared and I took the exams and I scored in the top 10 percentile in the Navy, including Annapolis graduates. So it looked like my track was clear. Like I'm headed to Pensacola, and that was my dream. And to make a long story short, there was I had to get a waiver because they discovered I had knee surgeries, and so waiting for that, the Gulf War happens, and I'm thinking this is perfect because they're going to crank up spending on aviation or military budgets. And so that's what I kept thinking. We need a war to open up, and that happened. So the end of it all didn't come to fruition because once the Gulf War ended, the ground war, 72 hours. And the military always needs assessment. If they don't need aviators, they had at that time, they were cutting back the Reagan buildup. Dick Cheney, DefSec under Bush 1, was cutting back the Reagan buildup, crushing budgets everywhere. They hit aviation first and hard. And it just disappeared right in front of me. And if I would have been a
Wow.
little bit sooner, the Marines called me up. And this is an interesting story on how God works. I gave up everything for this, everything. And I dedicated everything because I knew God wanted me to blow shit up and kill bad guys. I knew that as true as I'm sitting here. And I knew it was absolutely going to happen. And so in the meantime, when I was waiting for a 6-month period to go by so I could retake my exams to get at 1 point higher, I was trying anything to try to measure up to what they needed. But I took the Army ASVAB test. It's kind of a reversal. Like I had a perfect flight aptitude rating with the Navy, perfect academic section with the Army. Well, the Marines called me up one day because they got all my tests and they're like, okay, a 9 out of 9 on flight aptitude, academic portion of the ASVAB. This guy's a freaking genius. And he's, obviously got the background. They called me up. They had a spot for me in Pensacola in 2 weeks. So,
Wow.
yeah. So they said, Scott, we got a spot for you. But I didn't have my more advanced physicals. And they said, I forget, I thought he asked me about NAMI physicals, was Naval Aerospace Medical Institute, whatever, which surprised me because you got to go further down the road. But I just said, I have only had my primaries at MEPS, sir. And he said, oh, son of a gun. He said, we have a spot for you in 2 weeks, next class. He said, the best we can do is send you to Willow Grove Air Base in outside of PA, Jersey. He said, but by the time we get those exam results back, physical results back, he said, it'll be 2 weeks into the next class. So I missed it by that much. And then after the Gulf War ended in 90, everything just changed. And that was it. My life was ruined. Now I have neither of these endeavors. And that was painful. It took me 10 years to get over that. That was the dream of my lifetime. But my point about this is this. Obviously, today, because of what I do and the people I go after and such ruthlessness attacking on this power structure, I have to travel the security team when the threats were coming. early
Mhm.
on, when I just decided to declare my own war. And so I've had to travel with security guys, special forces, SEALs, Marines, guys like that. And and I've had experience around these men, and they're incredible, disciplined, smart, fearless machines. And
Mhm.
I see the broken souls. I see the pain they suffer because the PTSD, because of what they had to see, do, endure, witness, deal with. War is horrific. Everybody thinks it's Hollywood, but it is horrific, and many don't recover from it. And that's why we have 22 soldiers a day, every day, killing themselves. So these guys shared these things with me, and I realized that what Diane said to me the day that I read my DOD letter to her, crying my eyes out. She said, Scotty, she was a devout Christian. And I was a born again Christian since I was 14. And she said, Scotty, she said, I really thought this is what God wanted for you. She said, but I can tell you, God doesn't put dreams in front of your face for you to reach for them and then pull them away when you grab for them. She said, if he does, it's only because he has something greater in store for you. That was what got me through. That was the one thing that I could hang on to. And I did for years. And I didn't think much about it for a lot of years. But obviously, I think today is an indicator that I don't have that weight on me of guilt, having killed how many countless innocent people that I couldn't even see their faces when I was going to do it,
Yeah.
from the air, and living with the fact that beautiful creatures were slaughtered because of these international bankers in this crime syndicate that runs Washington, D.C. And so I was blessed that I didn't get to live out what I thought was my dream. My dream turned out to be what I'm doing now, delivering my victory
Mhm.
for humanity in a way that empowers humanity, not just myself.
Yeah.
So that's kind
Oh,
of where I went.
that is such a great story. I just have to say a side note, and then I have another question. So
Mhm.
I interviewed Boone Cutler's wife, Melissa, and her Boone Cutler was really on a journey to try to help those folks that you're just talking about with veterans who are wanting to commit suicide, and so I'm not in that world, and I never was, but it's coming to my attention through people like her and you,
Mhm.
that there's so much work that needs to be done to help veterans and then families of veterans too. And so I'm glad you brought that up because that's a continued fight for sure. Um, but along with that, so now I want to continue this story of yours. So when did you, after that, when did you start to see things around you in the bigger bubble
Mhm.
and maybe in your bubble realize that things were not as they seemed, that you were lied to about things? I've interviewed people and it was 9/11, it was, other things, the pandemic. What first sparked your questioning of things?
Well, after the Navy thing, fell apart. The next thing that inspired me was I was at an event in Pennsylvania at the time, and um, I never heard of this guy, but he was a speaker that night, and it was probably 10,000 people in the area, and I was way in the nosebleed section, and this obscure, relatively unknown minority whip in the House of Representatives in DC was on stage speaking, and that was Newt Gingrich. And then, of course, Gingrich became the Speaker of the House, engineered the overthrow. Took him 20 years to overthrow the Democrat rule of Congress, whereby the Democrats controlled both houses of Congress for 70 years. Or the Republicans never had, if they did have one of the chambers, it was temporary, but to have both of them and have real power, they hadn't had it in 70 years. So Gingrich in 90 was given this speech, and I remember him when he was speaking. It was so powerful that he was banging his fist on the lectern saying, Ronald Wilson Reagan changed the history of the human race. And I'm listening to this, and I had, like I have now, goosebumps everywhere. And I was so inspired and zeroed in on that with so much intensity. I'm like, that is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to deliver my victory for humanity. I'm going to go, I'm going to become, my goal is to become a United States Senator. So from 1990, when I got involved, for the next 16 years, I am obviously, because Reagan was a big influence on me in the 80s, but I just started to consume, get involved, help campaigns, all this stuff. But as I have natural curiosity, so I'm always trying to learn stuff. I start to see things that are going on way back then, like
Mhm.
George H.W. Bush winning the election and then telling the whole world he wants to see a kinder, gentler America. I'm like, what did he just say? We just brought down the Soviet bear with Reagan's rhetoric, and Reagan's vision for the world. We're no longer sitting back and taking this beating. While the policy of détente in Europe against the Soviets, détente is containment. Well, containment led to the overtaking of 35 nations in 20 years with the Russian machine. And he's like, my policy is rollback. We're going to roll back the Soviet Union. That was so courageous and so much conviction. He was my hero. So when I started to listen to George H.W. Bush, the New World Order, and we learned, of course, later on, I had read afterwards that he lured Saddam into Kuwait. And then when Saddam went in to take over the northern fields, which he felt was their territory, anyways, he realized he was double crossed. Then said, "Okay, I'm going to burn every oil well in this country." And so, and in retreat, Bush put the war machine on the highway to death, and they just used A-10s to chew up metal and flesh for miles and miles when they're in retreat, going home. So now Clinton's coming on the scene as a governor, and I started to research it, and that's where it all began. And I went down the deepest rabbit hole, and I'm like, holy crap, what is going on here? How can this guy be anywhere in the media as a potential candidate, let alone gaining ground? So my rabbit hole began in 90, and it just went deeper and deeper and deeper, and it went in many, many directions. So that's where it all started. But by 2006, after the Republicans controlled the House, Senate, White House under Shrub Bush, and became the biggest spenders in history, 7 wars in 7 years, and taking down other countries. 911 was an inside job cover up. By the time 2006 came around, it was over for me. In 2004, I was running. I was working the second Bush campaign in Los Angeles, which is tough enough. I mean, you're conservative Republican, a place like Los Angeles, getting involved in politics. Like, really?
Yeah.
How smart is this guy, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I've been safer in Apache country, believe me. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, but it was a great experience because managing a campaign inside of a district in California where there were 78% registered Democrat in that district. We nearly pulled off an upset with my candidate. So,
Wow.
which would have been probably the biggest story in the country. Because when you can tip the balance in a way like that, everybody in the country knows, how the hell did you do this? It's happened before. Brett Schundler in New Jersey City in 92 went down and became a mayor of Jersey City, 89% black, all Democrats. He wins as a conservative Republican. How'd you do it? Gingrich flew him into DC. How? He said, I went down the ghettos. I talked to him. Like, you ever
Mhm.
wonder why? Look at the places you live in. I mean, you guys are like destroying your own place. Well, I mean,
Right.
would it be better if you guys owned this place? If you owned it, you think you'd take better care of
Yeah.
it? Yeah, probably. Why do you think these guys in government won't give you the title and deed? So if there's any value in the real estate rise, you can be part of it too. Like, yeah, man, heck yeah, that's right. He talked to them in their language, in their
Mhm.
backyard, and he appealed to them. Overwhelmingly voted him as mayor. It was the biggest political upset in the nation for decades. That's what it takes. And that's
Right.
connecting with the people. And you cannot connect with people unless you have a heart and soul for the people. I don't care what mechanics you learn. If they can tell if you care or not. If they feel you don't
Absolutely.
care, nothing matters.
Yeah. And so what made you then, I didn't realize you had so many years of a background in really focused deep in the political arena. And so when did you switch out of that and go on this journey? When did you start this journey that you're on now?
Well, 2006, by 2004, or by 2006, 2004 is the last year I had anything to do with elected politics. Because once I realized, '06, by then that it was an inside job, the Pentagon and 911, all that was an inside job. I was so disgusted and realized that I would never get to Washington, because one man asked me one time when I was on a campaign for my candidate, Mark Eisler. He fills in for Dennis Prager on the radio in Los Angeles. He's a Jewish Republican, great guy, great candidate. And, this wealthy business guy came up at one of the events and he says, Scott, he said, you're the candidate here. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're a better candidate than your candidate. Do you realize that? I'm like, wow, thank you. And he said, listen, he said, you live in Encino, right? I said, yeah. He said, if you'd be willing to move over to Glendale in that district, he said, I could raise $10 million for a congressional seat. He said, I've seen you enough. You can speak for hours endlessly with zero note cards and on any subject. And he said, and people trust you. I see it. He said, you could win that congressional seat. And I said, I'm really flattered by that, sir. I said, but I'm really not interested. He said, what the hell do you mean you're not interested? Everybody knows you want to get to Washington. I said, well, that's true. I said, but I will never set foot in that beltway ever until I said, unless it's on my own terms. He said, what are your terms? I said, well, until I create enough wealth so no man owns me, I'll never do it. Because once I get there, they're going to run me out of town so fast, because my goal is to pull the curtain back on both parties and show the country how they're destroying our nation, both of them. Yeah. And I had that in my head back then. And he said, and I said, I have to have a life to go back to, because if I don't, they'll capture me too, because nothing's worse than being treated like a rock star, have ass kissers around you, having the government credit card to eat at the best restaurants in Georgetown every night, junkets with taxpayer money. You're bulletproof in so many ways. And you're going to stand on principle and go back to what? Little podunk town in Kentucky where you used to work at the hardware store? No way. Right. These people don't do that. They're going to keep what they got. And I said, I'm not taking that risk. And so he said, I respect that. I moved out of LA in 2006. I started a company in Las Vegas, in Summerlin, against the mountains, west of the Las Vegas Strip, against the mountain range. And Kevin Wynn, Steve's daughter, was helping me get a foothold in the community with business, found out my background, and she and her husband, Daniel, invited me to their house for dinner one night. They wanted to talk to me about getting involved in Nevada politics. And they were wonderful people. And it was a hard thing to say no to. But I just said, not interested. Told them why. I said, I've given 16 years of my life, no pay. I never took a penny ever, not even when I was campaign manager. Wow. Because I wanted the money to go to win in the race. I never took a penny. All those years, not 1 cent. And so I just said, I've given all that. I've given that. I said, my life now is one thing: money, business. I've missed a lot of that. And so that's the only thing I care about. But one day, 2015, I think it was June 15th, 2015, walked past the TV just by chance. I see all the cameras and there's Trump coming down an escalator with Melania. And I was indifferent. I mean, Trump's obviously an iconic man. I know that, but I wasn't tuned into, anything other than people kissing his ass like Mitt Romney to get $1 million contributions and support him. And I just thought, oh, I'm going to see what's going on. A few minutes into it, I'm thinking, he sounds like he's announcing he's going to run for the presidency. Like he's really going to do it. And whenever it said 5-6 minutes in, he goes, and you see them back there, they're fake news. I'm like, and I was like, and he goes, fake news. I was like, holy shit, there he is. Oh my God, I never saw him coming. I've been telling everybody there's no Reagan on the horizon. We're screwed. There he is. I was like, yeah. Holy shit. I grabbed my phone. I'm texting people. Hey, what are you doing? I don't care. Stop. Get in front of a TV. You have to see this. This is history. This is the Republican nominee, landslide president. Just do it. I'm calling people who used to work in my campaigns and telling everybody. I go to Facebook then after the speech became epic. I go to Facebook and I just start raining it down. and I'm being attacked for the next 18. I'm getting pummeled on Facebook for 18 months by my Republican friends, mind you, because they're all Ted Cruz fans. And somebody'd throw something out, I'd give them a 14-page dissertation of why they're wrong and why this is going to happen. And this went on. It just went on for a year and a half. But people were saying, oh, it's already in Hillary. I've said, I'm telling you right now, as true as I'm standing here, Trump takes this election. It is done. It is over, because he struck the chord that has been part of my vibration all of my political life. This guy is the only guy that can do what he's done and what he's doing. Nobody could. Ted Cruz,
Yep.
he's Texas senator. Okay, go look at his wife. Where's she come from? Bush acolyte, Goldman Sachs. I don't care what you think. This guy's compromised. And now we're finding Ted Cruz is loyal not to the United States. He's loyal to Israel, right? So, of course, the whole time, this is going this way. And then Trump wins. And so I was like, finally. And then he does what he does. And then 4 years of this bullshit, of this crime syndicate in D.C., Republicans trying to take him down, Democrats, the UN, the Vatican, the royal houses around the world, big tech media, media's trying to destroy him, Hollywood. And I'm like, folks, what the hell can't you see? What don't you understand? Look at the entire global machine is trying to destroy one man. What does that tell you? One man. This is the existential threat of I didn't know how satanic it was, but this global empire that's stripping this country and the world to the bone. And I could see it. And then, I just kind of went along for the ride. I wasn't active until they launched BLM and Antifa. And once I saw the political class not only stopping it, but, unloading truckloads of bricks in cities for the chaos and all that, no, people burning down blocks, murdering people in the open, and nothing's being done. And one day I woke up in 2020, January, I forget exactly what the date was, but as soon as I get out of bed, I was just like, you know what? I am sick of this bullshit. If these scumbags in DC won't say it, then I'm going to have to do it myself. Called a friend of mine who was on Revolution Radio, talked to him. I was on a guest a couple of times. He said, the producers are always impressed with you. They're always looking for good talent. So set me up with an interview. I sold him on the idea that I want it to be about, spiritual consciousness, human ascension, things like that. And they knew the political stuff too, but I really wanted a high vibration, show.
Yes.
Right out of the gate, George H.W. Bush is a child rapist, murdering leader of the Fourth Reich, Nazi pedophile, running drugs for the CIA. And boom, the whole thing just detonates right in front of me. And I just couldn't stop myself for 2 hours. After the show's over, I was virtually sick to my stomach, like ready to puke. I thought, my God, they're just going to say, get this lunatic out of here. And they were like, that was awesome. I'm like, what? That was incredible. I'm like, I thought, they're like, this is what Revolution Radio is all about. I'm like, really? So the next week I'm like, but I'm going to get back on the spirit. I couldn't 6 months of this. I'm like, I'm tapping out. I can't go into that zone. Apparently I'm built for warfare. And that's what it was warfare, but a lot of fun.
That's so interesting, Scott, as you continue talking about that, because, it's so interesting that what you had as your profession and helping in politics and the Republicans and the Bush people, that's what you found. The closest thing you were in that time, you found not only 9/11, but then even worse. I mean, that had to have been completely devastating to you to come to that realization, and how did you have the mindset to come to the realization without going, yeah, there's no way, because so many people, they're closed off to that, but you weren't. You were open to know that.
Yeah, I was digging stuff up for decades. By the time 2020 rolled around, it's now 30 years of my life. This is my passion. This is all I ever thought about. It's all I ever did. People wouldn't even, I was been pushed away by so many people so often. because
Yep.
of my mindset for the country and freedom and whatever. I mean, if I was in a bar, which wasn't my scene, but if I was in a bar and I'm now talking to some beautiful girl, I would blow that in 5 minutes. I'd bring up Ronald Reagan's name and there it ends. Right. So that's kind of how it was. Or if I was around my family or friends, they'd be like, whatever you do, do not bring up anything about politics. Because once I start, no matter what I say, Scott, shut up. My brain's saying, shut the hell up, Scott. Shut up right now. I'm like, F you. I'm going to keep going. Blow them out. I don't care. They need to know. So that's how it was with me forever. And one of my friends, he was with the agency since we got out of college. We were roommates at Penn State, and actually in high school we were friends in high school. And he went to the agency, and I mean I was there watching him burn the letters that the CIA would send him, as a senior at Penn State, recruiting him because he was a math whiz. And I remember him saying to one of my sisters, he goes, yes, he's always been quite a bit of a conspiracy theorist, right? And I was like, boy, that really hurts. Well, it turned out to be everything I was telling him was 100% true. So by the time 2020 hits, I had been down to the middle of the earth, digging up things and trying to, just around me, tell people, show them, whatever. It wasn't until COVID was coming on, I guess, but mainly when they stole the election. And that was what woke so many people up. And, when I read the National Defense Authorization Act in 2012 that was passed, that was authored by the Republican House and the Republican Senate, passed in both houses, signed by Obama. There's riders in there. And one of those was that if there's a stated national emergency by the president, he automatically gets a kill switch on the internet, control the power grid, and control the food supply. And I said, these Republicans just gave their sworn enemy the keys to destroy the country. And I was so mortified and shocked. I realized all these bastards are in on it. They all know what I know. These bastards they're selling out the country for their own life and wealth. And I lost that hope until Trump came along. Then when they stole the election, it was, I said on the radio show coming into the fall, I said, I'm going to tell you two things are going to happen here. This is going to be a landslide in the making for Trump. And they're going to insist that Joe Biden's winning. That's what the media will do. And I said, before it's all over, Fox News will stab Trump in the back. And sure enough, exactly those two things happened. Fox stabbed Trump in the liver on election day, called Arizona long before it was over. It started a whole wave of theft. And then, of course, the world's coming unglued. People are like shocked and scared, literally scared shitless about what's about to happen to the country. And I had stumbled onto the Q operation like many other people when it came online. And so I lived it for 3 years, in real time, analyzing everything. And I could see something that even most people couldn't see who weren't political junkies. When we were seeing the exposure of all this stuff, and under Trump, I can see the global stage because when a president couldn't tell a reporter who's the president of this nation, I'd be like, what? I know the president of that country. How can a freaking Canada know? That always baffled me. Because I was paying attention to global politics. When I saw the chess game being played differently than I've ever seen it in decades, that's how I knew the Q-op was absolutely legitimate, and the proofs were rolling out 500 Q proofs. Like, there you go again. So I had the comfort of when they stole the election that this is all part of the plan, right? And so one of my friends about 5 days later called me up and said, hey, Scott, or he said, Lee and I were at a barbecue. His name's Jim Bothell. We were at a dinner with some business people here in South Carolina. We're gonna do something on Sunday ourselves. And he said, we're gonna invite a few over and just have some food, whatever. He goes, Lee said to ask you if you would come in on their TV on a Zoom and kind of explain this to the people that are gonna be with us, calm them down. So I did. And I uploaded it to my YouTube channel, which was just my radio shows uploaded after the radio show I did. And so I uploaded that Zoom and it got like 16,000 views. And the most views I ever had on the radio show was like 2,500 on that YouTube channel. But I had enough subscribers, I think I had little over 1,000. I could live stream if I wanted to. But so that happened on a Sunday night, and we were seeing what was happening. And I said, he said, we should do that like every week. I said, I actually plan on doing that. I'm already doing a radio show. I said, I'm gonna light up YouTube and try see how live streaming works. So of course I turned that live stream camera on that night, and I just talked to that camera for 52
Mhm.
minutes, and just kind of saying, calm down. Let me help you understand what's happening here, laying this out. This presidency, Trump's presidency, was a de facto military presidency to bring down the entire global power structure and free humanity. And I laid out all the details and the facts. And then at the end of that, you know, it was like, went to bed that night, and it was on a Thursday. Woke up on Friday. I get phone calls, texts. One phone call, guy called me up, and he says, this was kind of funny looking back. He says, man, he says, can you believe it? He said that video you did's going viral. I was like, what video? He said, you know, that live stream you did last night. I'm like, I didn't really know what it all meant. I said, really? He goes, yeah, man. He said, Mike Adams, he's pushing that thing out everywhere. I was like, no shit. He goes, yeah. I said, who's Mike Adams? I had no idea. And so it's
Oh,
kind of like I walked under Niagara Falls. That's what it felt like, because people are coming at me from everywhere. Like, where the hell have you been? I'm like, where have I been? I've been saying this shit for 30 years. Where have you people been? Right?
yeah.
It was a lot of fun. But then it went from there. And then you know, I would one night I remember I was you probably seen me kind of go off the rails and blow a gasket more than one time on Patriot Street Fighter, but I'm
Yeah.
blowing a gasket about something one night, and I'm like getting all ramped up and like, you people keeps calling me Patriot Street Fighter. I'm not Patriot Street Fighter. You people are the Patriot Street Fighters. And then I start getting a flood of emails from around the world. Scott, I'm a Patriot Street Fighter in Zimbabwe, or I'm a Patriot Street Fighter in Australia, or I'm a Patriot Street Fighter in Mongolia, of all places. Like said, like 30 countries, people from 30 countries just pouring into my email, thousands of emails. And you know, so I'm like, obviously this is morphing into a battle cry once they tried to mask us and give us a kill shot. And that tipped the scales completely, because I'm like, F you. I see what's happening. You will never mask me. You will have to put a bullet in my head out there in the street. You'll never muzzle me. I'm not going to live on this planet. Kill me if you want. I already said when I found out they were butchering 8 million kids a year, the satanic empire of gutting and
Yeah.
murdering, raping, and drinking their blood, and all this evil shit that's happening with politicians in DC, actors in Hollywood. All the royal families are all pedophile Satanists. The whole power structure on the planet is a pedophilic, satanic architecture that feeds itself on the blood of children, like Mel Gibson said. When I found that out, and I told my dad, like when I'm launching this war, I told him, I said, I'm telling you, Dad, I will not last a year. And I want you to understand this, because they kill people that do what I'm doing. But I want you to know, and I want you to make sure my sisters understand, when that happens, I don't want anybody bawling and being sad. I said, the only reason I've been put on this planet is for this right here. And I said, the only way they're ever going to shut me up, they're going to have to put a bullet in my head. I've been dead once because I was pulled out of a grave in that catastrophic motorcycle crash in 2014 that destroyed me and paralyzed me. Like, I'm not really worried about being dead. You know, been there before, been there, done that. So, um,
Well, you know what, Scott? I got to go back to that then. So 2014, where were you in your journey when that happened? What happened there?
um, I was um, I was living in Montville, New Jersey. I left the West Coast after 23 years, and I married a girl who was from North Jersey, somebody I knew for decades. And so I moved back there, and then about a year into the marriage, it wasn't going well. It was just chaos. I made a huge mistake there, but so I'm coming home on my motorcycle, and I'm coming around a bend, and as soon as I get around this bend, about 60 seconds from my house, there's a white van straddling both lanes, like dead center in the road. So of course I reacted very quickly. I hit my back brake and my tire skids to the left and I'm going around the bend. So I'm going to lose it. The only way you capture it, you got to turn where, where the back end's going, which means me,
Hmm.
if I'm supposed to go this way, now I'm going this way, which has put me head on to a van. Once I got the bike under control, I was dead. I mean, it's right there. And I'm like, I'm dead. I knew it. But I thought, try to lay the bike down on its side to slow it down, which was a stupid idea. If it's a dirt bike, it'll stop almost instantly because the ground's soft, but I'm on amosite and it's steel. And it's just, as soon as I got it down on its side, I'm still on it. And the underside, like the underside of here's the bike and here's the side of the van. Here comes the bike like this. And the bike is now on its side and it hits full force at 50 miles an hour into the side of the van. It buckled the van like in two, and it's like an IED went off up my crotch. It blew my pelvis off my spine. It blew it open in the front. I had an open book fracture that was blown up. Like when you dilate as a lady giving birth. Well, mine was just busted apart so far. They said I could have delivered a 30-pound baby. So,
Oh God.
and my left femur was broken in 7 places. My left foot, it rotated opposite an ankle sprain to where it nearly fully severed the, like across that part of the ankle, severed it and exposed the ankle bone. And it's going down into the footboard in the Harley. So the ankle bone busted in 2 pieces and flew out the back of my boot. And so it was just, catastrophic. The impact was gruesome. I heard all the bones breaking and the steel and the smell of the gasoline. And so I land on I'm face down on the road and trying to get my bearings because the impact was so violent. I'm just trying to shake it off. And as I'm laying there, there's my body's contorting upwards, like my chest is raising off the ground. And I was completely lost control of my body. And I was thinking, what the hell's happened? What's going on? Once I got my bearings, why is it doing this? And then I realized I'm not breathing anymore. And I thought the downward force and the instant stop might have like severed my lungs or something. It was really creative thinking. Because blood was coming out of my mouth on the road. And I couldn't see the destruction down below, but I guess it was pretty grotesque. A neighbor was on the scene and said that didn't know it was me. They come around a bend, saw this, stopped the car across the road to stop everybody, and 2 months later, didn't realize it was me until she found out that just saw this guy laying on the road. His leathers on, and she said, "I just knew whoever it was, they were dead because their body was going in directions the body can't go." So, anyways, I'm face down, and it occurs to me that you're not breathing. It's like, and my brain went through this very quick process. Okay, you're gonna die. And I looked over to this fence line. I thought, I'm gonna die right here, like right now. I'm like, yep. I'm like, okay, everything's gonna be okay. Because quantum physics became my secondary Bible, so I could understand the Christ consciousness. I knew that I was I'm going to ascend. I'm ascending. I'm cashing out here. It's done. And so I just laid my forehead down on the road. And as I was laying my head down on the road, I looked out the corner of my eye and I saw the 2 dudes that were driving the van, 2 Hispanic guys. They're just standing there like this, looking at me. And I'm like, they're going to watch me die. No judgment whatsoever. Just like, acknowledgement. So I laid my forehead down the road. And just my mind's going a million miles an hour. Just everything's going to be okay. You're just going to fade to black in about 40 seconds and everything's going to be okay. So it's just complete peace settled right over me. And then at some point, you feel yourself slipping, you're fading. And then at some point, your consciousness is basically now on its baseline. And shortly thereafter, I guess people, the white light's making itself available. And I started hearing this really horrible noise and it was deafening. I couldn't, I still had some semblance of consciousness because I'm thinking, what is that noise? Where's the white light? And then this noise got louder and it was just like ferocious at one point. And then some point thereafter, I don't know how much time it took, but now I'm fading back into full consciousness. And then I realize I can see, I'm like, my brain was talking in a way I talk now, like, holy shit, I'm still alive. And I'm like, wait a minute. this is bullshit. I was like, what are you doing? I was totally ready. I was good to go. Right. So I was half pissed in this massive trauma. But so of course, right here, right over there in this house, the top professor at Columbia University Medical Schools lives right there. He's on staff at Presbyterian in Manhattan. Uh, his son was out in the yard. He saw this and he went and said, Dad, you better come out. There's something really bad just happened. So, I mean, listen to this guy talk. Some guys talk in my ear. They told me not to move, and I can hear him talking about uh, where they could land a chopper at the soccer field right up the road, telling these, and there was a medic unit was going by. They heard the call, so they came up there, and they were talking about let's just get him, secured and get him in here, get him to the hospital. He's going to bleed out right here because my foot was just pouring blood right out into my boot and everywhere. So I heard him talking about that, and I heard him say, "Do not take him." I forget one hospital. Do not get him to Morristown Trauma. He's never going to make it. So they get me into this backboard and they get me in a gurney and they're hauling ass like a bat out of hell. I thought I'm not going to make it because they could tell they're literally, I'm like thinking they're like risking everything to, I thought it's that serious. So get there in a room now, chaos. I'm on a steel table. They've cut everything off of me. You're buck naked, opened up, and you have like 8 people in this chaotic symphony. They're trying to do everything they can to save me before, it's all over. And so once this all happened, first surgery I went to is to stop, get the foot in position where it's not going to bleed out because blood's coming out faster and they can put it in me. And my wife walked in the room. They brought her in because they figured that I wasn't going to make it. And so when I walked in, there's blood all over the place, the table, the floor, they're walking through it and they're working feverishly to get me prepared to surgery, to get me in there to stop that from happening. Of course, once that happened, 11 days later, I wake up to the nightmare of all nightmares. I was all the metal they had to put in me. I've got a L5S1 spinal fusion. They had to screw 6-inch screws into my pelvis, into my spine on both sides. Once they got it back on there, then they had to put a plate in the front of it, bring it together, plate it. They had to put a long, like a 20-inch plate on the outside of my femur from my hip clear down close to the knees, bunch of screws in there, reattach my foot, rebuild the ankle. Of course, I had broken vertebrae, ribs, paralyzed on my left side. It was a total nightmare. So I wake up to that. Now my life from one day, I've been a high performance
Yeah.
athlete all my adult life, to this complete wrecked hall that's now a prison. And I know I'm never getting out of it. It was an absolutely terrifying thing to live with. So it was pretty awful for a long time.
How did you mentally then, because I know you're a very spiritual guy. And
Mhm.
so did it come after? Did that what get you through it? Did you reach a really low period after that? What happened there?
Well, to get through that kind of trauma, it's literally weeks when the pain is horrific. When I couldn't think about what was going to come next because I was just trying to survive every minute. I watched the secondhand clock go around, secondhand on the clock for like 24 straight hours, just thinking, please let me die, And so at some point where I'm becoming cognizant of what's happened to me, and I was in a state of ICU psychosis. It's a form with all the anesthesia they had to use. You become psychotic. It's so much chemical imbalances in your brain. I thought I was being held in a secret location having medical experiments done on me. I was convinced of that. My
Ah,
wife was in on it, my family, everybody. It was terrifying. So
yeah.
once I got through that in a few days, then um, and I'm becoming aware of my fate here. Uh, it was just survival every day. Once they would walk into the room, the nurses would come in. I could see I was like, obviously I was like this in a horrible position, and I could look up and see the monitors. My resting heart rate was 125 resting, and my blood pressure, it was high, obviously. But as soon as they'd walk in, I could see it climb up. My resting heart rate would go to 225. The only time you get a
Uh-huh.
225 heart rate is if you're a Navy pilot. bringing your aircraft in to land on a deck
Mhm.
in bad weather or rolling hard deck. That's what their heart rate is up to, sitting still. That kind of trauma, stress. So that's what would happen. And I knew what was coming. They're going to turn me because they can't get bed sores. And when they put all these, bolted me together, I'm like a rickety picnic table, my skeleton. And so when they would roll me, I would literally be crying and begging them, please hurry, please hurry. And I remember this one nurse one day, I could see her tears hitting my sheet. She was crying, just looking at this big, strong man like a little boy. Please, please hurry, please hurry. And I'll never forget that. But it took about 3 weeks. And then there was a point where my wife was at my side, and she was miraculous for a period of time. It ended up in ending the marriage, but um, there was one point at 3 weeks when I'm sort of mentally stable now, and she started bringing up what this condition, my condition, is going to do to our lives. And I remember thinking, wow, I just climbed out of a grave 15 minutes ago, and this is what you're bringing up to me. So hence the word ex-wife. But anyways, I remember I kind of leaned my head over like this, and I talked like this because even my voice box was damaged from the impact. Like that for
Wow.
6 months. I say
Wow.
that was a point in my life where I sounded like a milk toast pussy.
I can't believe it.
My favorite insult. And when she said that to me, and I just said, "Look, I know how bad this is," and I really didn't, because the degree of the paralysis didn't come. The knowledge didn't come until months as it was going on, and the tests, the neurological tests, to be able to say, "Oh, this is destroyed. That's destroyed." Blah blah blah. So, but I said, "I know how bad this is." I said, "Look, you know me." I said, I am not going to allow this to be a liability in my life. I'm going to turn it into an asset. I don't know how yet, but I assure you, I'm going to turn this into an asset. And so that was my mindset, was just to get out of there, get into a rehab hospital. And when they put me in, from this beautiful Taj Mahal hospital trauma center, which is Morristown University, or Morristown Hospital Trauma Center, Taj Mahal. These people are angelic to me. And what they did to keep me alive and get me through this, treating you like an infant, wiping your butt for you, all these things that you can't do anything. And so rehab hospital was very depressing. Old building, old manufacturing building, retrofitted, dim, grim, and it was really, really tough to endure that mentally. But I finally got home, and the house was outfitted with wheelchair ramps going up multiple staircases, and ramps for the wheelchair chair lifts, all that stuff. So it forwarding this story, 8 months later, I'm now homeless, crippled, and penniless because I'm having conflict with my wife already. Um, just things morally or ethically, as a person, that I would never accept. I was, to try to keep peace, but it was used against me, and I was put in a very tough situation where I had to fend for myself in this terrible condition when I wouldn't comply. So one day I just decided, I can't fight. I can't fight two wars at once and win one. I'll lose them both. This is the only war that counts. So I
Right.
I called a bluff one day and said, that's it. I don't care if I end up on that street. I am not going to allow this to happen to my mind, because I've been studying quantum physics, became my second Bible 15 years ago. Epistemology, metaphysics, philosophies, religion. I was studying everything, trying to find this blueprint to this creation called the universe and how to live it properly. And
Mhm.
so I knew that I was going to fight a war every day, and I was going to walk again. I don't care what they said. I didn't listen to any of that bullshit. I'm going to walk again. I'm going to work again, and I'm going to ride again. That was my mindset. So when I was homeless, a friend brought me to his place for a few months. Could have stayed there as long as I wanted to, but by December that year, it happened in April. By December, I'm $500,000 in debt because my health insurance was canceled out of spite just before the crash. So all that came down on top of me. Lost my company. I lost everything I own except my clothes. And a very, very wonderful Jewish friend of mine, a Jewish man, 70-year-old Jewish man, took me into his home in California, where I lived for many years. And I just was able to get on a plane one day before I was going to put a bullet into my head. I had enough air miles to go out to the West Coast to get some sunshine because the weather was really hurting me because all the metal in me gets cold, like in cold weather. And Alan Davis, his significant other Joyce, when I was visiting them, she said, "You know what? You're done with that nonsense back here. You're coming back to California. You're going to live with Alan." Because Alan's in a motorized chair. He lost his ability to walk from a very rare disease that only Ashkenazi Jews in the world get this disease. And so I've known him for decades. I've watched this happen to him. We were very close friends. And so she said, I would rather you be here with him. You have your own bedroom, your own bathroom. If you're here with him, I'm more comfortable. I'm 10 minutes away. And he gets into a problem. I'm always worried about it. She goes, this will be perfect. So that saved my life, truly saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And my friend Jordan Wexler, gave me a temporary job with his company to try to make some money to survive. It didn't last very long, but I had a place to live, and I refused a disability check. I could not allow my brain ever buying into the fact that I was disabled. So I was poverty stricken, hungry, whatever. But I was eating eggshells for 2 years because I needed to get calcium in my body to heal all these bones. And I didn't have any money for supplements or the right food. But I survived it. I spent every day of my life in combat right here. Like the pain I had to endure with the gravity, these injuries and the paralysis. I was now on Moby legs. I was out of wheelchair. I could get on Moby leg crutches and drag myself to a gym and just fight this war. And the first time that I'd say, Ellen, that it impacted me was I'm back in Los Angeles in Encino to a gym there. And when I was there years ago training, I had this powerful physique, my life looked so on track to most people. That guy just has it all, right? Then they see me. I am this fraction of the man I once was, just completely destroyed. Like, oh my God, what happened? You just didn't want to look at you. So I endured
Yeah.
that for years, and I just kept banging away, enduring the horrific, because I had to ramp the pain way up. The pain was bad enough, but when I went on attack, I knew I'm going to use everything that I know about what I've done for decades, and I'm going to
Yep.
force this machine to work. It's going to wake up somewhere. And so, of course, that happened. And it took me 5 years to walk again, and had my life back. I'm in the solar industry, designing solar systems. And I moved to Dallas because I had an opportunity with a friend of mine, and I'm working again. And then maybe a year later, I made it the whole way back. I'm riding again. So I get my dream Harley Davidson. And I was like, I remember going down the highway in Dallas. I'd be like, on the interstate, I'd be like looking up saying, I told you, God, we'd make it back. And I called it the power of the Christ. And I said way back when I was paralyzed, I told my wife, I'm going to use the power of this consciousness. I call it the Christ consciousness. I'm going to walk again. Then I'm going to be on church stages in this country telling them how Christ's message really works. These works you will do, and even greater than I. And it ended up being, I was on the Reawaken tour in many of these big churches around the country telling the story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy
Yes.
how it all actually happened. But so 2.5 months after, I'm now riding again and I'm rebuilding my life. I just get into an apartment in Dallas. It's the first time I've been able to live on my own in 7 years. Now I'm 50, I'm 53 years old, and I'm 7 years I'm living with somebody else because I couldn't afford to survive. And I hadn't even had a chance. I had like a three-legged coffee table, a sectional couch given to me, and a frame of bed. That's it. And I kind of drive to North and get a truck and bring back furniture I put in storage up there. But before I could do that, I was coming in town. This was July the 5th or maybe it was the 19th of 2019. I'm coming in town one night, downtown Dallas. It's all lit up. It's like your daytime. So I'm coming through an intersection at a red light, and I'm going through, and I never saw it coming, but here's a big Texas pickup truck, high speed, took me out from the side. Wham! And the next thing I know, I'm airborne. I'm flying across 4 lanes at an intersection. My bike's airborne, and I'm headed for a curb head first. I had my elbows up like this, seeing the curb coming. As I'm coming down, I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it out of this one. And then the second impact's when you land. Wham! Another violent impact. And so as I kind of am laying here, I'm kind of getting my bearings, shaking it off. I look over and see my bike on the side of the road, just trashed. And I remember looking down around me, and I'm an incurable optimist. So my first thought was, holy shit, I just landed in the only patch of grass in downtown Dallas. Things are looking up for me. So I reach down to my right leg. I pick, like with my hands, I pick my thigh up, and right where the metal stops, 4 inches above my knee, a 100% clean break of my femur. And the foot, obviously I was worried about that because they only gave me a 30% chance it would survive. So I see about 6 inches above my ankle. My tibia and fibula are shattered, and it's my legs bent down 90 degrees and my foot's turned inward. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose my leg this time. So here I am in, again, the best place in the world for the second time, given my circumstances, was Baylor Trauma Center, 5 minutes from where I live downtown. So I'm in a trauma center, laying here. My leg's grotesquely broken, and the pain, you're just back here like this, trying to survive the pain. And so they're scanning my whole body, see what we got to address. Is there anything that could kill the guy? So then when you look at the x-ray, they put the scans up on these screens, and I'm laying in the bed and I'm looking over at them like this. And I see them look, the two trauma orthopedic surgeons, they're looking up and they're going like this, and they're seeing all this metal in my skeleton. And they're doing this. They're like looking at each other like this. And what do we, I was like, oh my God, they're going to take my leg. So I'm there all night. Next morning, in walks a guy from General Hospital. He looks like a GQ Hollywood actor. I'm like, there's no way this guy's a freaking trauma orthopedic surgeon. Sure enough, he was. Dr. Casey Cates, one of my heroes in the world.
Casey Cates.
Casey Cates sounds like a soap opera guy, and he looked the part.
It does.
I'm like,
central casting.
The central cab. I'm like, there is no guy that can help me that's this handsome. There's no way. So we're talking, and he said, we're talking about something. He says, I see your left leg's a little shorter. I said, yeah, because of the first bad break. And he said, well, I think I can fix that too. I'm like, what? And then, but I told him my story, and I said, Doc, please just give me one more chance. Keep my leg. I guarantee I will make it back again. He says, don't worry, Scott, I can save the leg. If I could have got out of that gurney and French kissed this guy, I would have held him down. I would have done it. I could not believe I'm going to keep my leg. So, yeah. So I go into surgery, and now they got to drive rods inside of my bones because the outsides were all covered. So they drove a rod from my knee upward, and then they drove another rod from my knee clear to the bottom through that mess. And then they had to rebuild my foot. And so here I am again, trying to get through all this. And I just got into an apartment. I'm out in the field. I'm designing solar systems. So 3 weeks later, I'm on crutches with my whole leg immobilized, horrific pain, going out there and meeting with people and designing solar systems for their house. I'd fall down in their house. Crazy shit was happening, but I had to do what I had to do. And I told nobody. My family knew nothing about any of this until they saw me on a stage at a Patriot Streetfighter event in Dallas 2 years later. It was being live streamed, and they were home watching it, and they're hearing this like, what? My sister started bawling her eyes out. My dad's like, what's he talking about?
Wow.
I told nobody. Wow. Like, I don't need any negativity coming into my head. I got another war to fight because I've got to walk again. So here we are. It's 2 years later. And so then Patriot Streetfighter happened because after I did the live stream, it was like 2 months after that, I bought the Harley Davidson. Now that's the Patriot Streetfighter, branded, painted Harley Davidson. But I got to tell you a funny story. My friend was like, hey, come on over and show you something. Here's my bike. Same guy that night came in a trauma center. And I know when they're looking at me, my two buddies, they're like, I know they're thinking, what an idiot. He got another motorcycle, and look what happens again. Right. So when I'm laying in that hospital bed, they come in and they're looking at me with that look on their face. I'm like, well, guys, I guess an epic comeback wasn't good enough. God wants a super epic comeback. They're like, it's the only thing I could do. It's the only thing I can say. So here I am 2 years later. I get the Patriot Streetfighter Harley Davidson. It wasn't custom painted yet, but so check this out. What do you think? He goes, Are you out of your effing mind? I'm like, well, we've already established that. How do you like the bike? He says, have you not learned a GD thing from all this? He said, like, and I'm like getting pissed. Well, yeah, like, what have you learned? I'm like, what I've learned is I'm impossible to kill. How do you like the bike? So, you are truly nuts, right? So, anyways, that's kind of that's the whole story. That's why I walk like I do with
Oh
that thick sole on
gosh.
my boot,
Yes.
my legs shorter
Wow.
for two massive breaks. So, got my Herman Munster boot on every day.
Scott, your whole life, and that's why I love hearing these stories because, your first part of your whole journey that you were talking about was of, things that bugged you. You were skinny, you were at the 67th place, you wanted to get into this part of the Navy, and then you wanted to get into, and these things, and you worked your ass off and you were mentally doing things that other people weren't able to do because of mentally where you were and that all of that led up to obviously that horrific accident, and you were able to mentally, because of your quantum physics understanding, mentally you deal with that, and then the second one, and I mean your whole life has been this mental journey of strength. Physical strength, yeah, that's obvious, that was what you were too. That was who you were outside that people could see. But the mental strength that you have had in your whole life totally outshines your physical strength. And
Mhm,
that's what's gotten you through everything. That and your spiritual connection with the higher good of God. And
mhm,
that is what sets people apart, I think, who are these warriors during this time with which we're living. And that's why I love talking to folks like you, because it makes sense,
mhm,
you know, as as to why you're here and who you are. And it's just an amazing story, Scott.
mhm,
I can't even tell you.
mhm. Well, I look back on it too, and uh, the my greatest talent is the only single talent God gave me. And it kind of pisses me off because it makes life very hard for me. And that talent is my inability to quit. That's the only talent I have,
Mhm.
is my inability or my refusal to give in. And it reminds me of
Yes.
Churchill's greatest speech ever in front of, I think it might have been Oxford graduating class. And it's the last time he's ever going to speak publicly. And he walks out on that stage and everybody's waiting for him to open his mouth and wax eloquent for 30 minutes and blow their minds. And he just looks around at him for a little while. Then he leans in the microphone and says, never, never, ever give in. And he walked off the
Mhm.
stage, the greatest speech ever. So things like that have affected me in my life, that it's just like, what's the worst can happen? You're going to be killed. So that's that bad. Why is it everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die? Right? It's absurd, right? And like I
Right,
said, I don't have fear of death, and especially
right.
being, with it upon you, and halfway there, 3/4 or 90%, whatever that was. Um, it's I believe in the ascension track. I believe that, you know, and I think this is where my advantage comes from. The Christian, the religious order on the planet has is the controlling power structure from the Vatican outwards. And I've said this many times. Look, folks, if you think that our holy Bible, that this book right here is the one thing on this planet that the Satanists all collectively agreed, we're going to lie about everything and we're going to invert everything 180 degrees. Good's bad, bad's good. Down's up, up's down, up's down. But this is one thing none of you can touch. Nobody. I'm like, come on, folks, cut the bullshit. They have revised this thing, rewritten it, translated it. You have a pedophile atheist, King James has this thing translated. Come on, people. And I say, I prove it to you. If you believe the full power of Christ's consciousness that he left behind is on the planet right now, explain to me how there are 8 million kids being kidnapped and pushed into a satanic trafficking network globally. You really
Yeah.
ask them if the Christ consciousness is working for them. If it isn't, it's because it's not at its full power. And why? I'm taught to turn the
Mhm.
other cheek. How many beatings do I need to take before I say, I'm done with this bullshit? I'm punching back. So I've taken on the church, the religious order. They watered down the power of Christ's life and his message in so many ways. They lied about so many things. And I always say, look, if I'm wrong, my creator will correct me in a very forceful way, right?
Right.
But so far, I've been knocking on those gates, pounding them to get in. And twice,
Mhm.
first time, he just said, no way, buddy. You're not coming up here till you clean up your language. So we're not ready for that. So,
Well, you're supposed to still be here for obviously for a reason because you know better than anybody that we're living in a time unlike any other time
ever,
ever.
ever.
And you're supposed to be here
Mhm.
with everything that you've been through right now
Mhm.
because the best is yet to come, obviously, but obviously it's going to get rocky and you're the guy part of this whole divine thing that's gonna get us through. And it gets me so jazzed every time I talk to someone like you because I see the divine writing on the wall in every step of the way. And I'm just so excited to be a part to share stories of people like you. I
Mhm.
love it.
It's fun. Look, people get so ramped up about what's not happening in the time that they want, and they don't understand how big and powerful this global order is. But there's, I, I just in my life, I say outlandish shit that most people say, I can't
Mhm.
believe he said that because it makes them laugh, either because of the shock, like, oh my God, he actually said something like that publicly, and they laugh their heads off. I've been like that for my whole life. I love to see people laugh because it's a
Yeah.
high vibration, it's happiness. I've been like that since I was young, and it's kind of bizarre. I don't know why, but in this thing too, look, if you can't find ways to have fun, you're in the wrong playground. I mean, I'd make since they tried to mask us, I mean, and I was, of course, probably saw me. I am like pissed. I'm calling them out in the camera, calling them every name in the book, and F you, here I am. Here's where I live. I'm downtown Dallas, 5 blocks from where they killed Kennedy. You want to come and get me? I'm right fucking here. This doesn't stop until you guys are in a box in the ground. And I'm saying this shit. I'm literally begging these people to kill me, right? It was like, you're so brave. I'm like, nah, I'm not that brave. These assholes are in a death spiral downwards. I'm just punching them on the way down. So, but I'm having fun. I'm in an Aldi supermarket, right? And so here I am. Everybody in Dallas forever is masked. Every human, friends of mine, everybody's masked but me all through the city. And I'd go everywhere I'd go, walk into Aldi one day and had one of these experiences where somebody's going to tee off on me, right? So I'm in the shopping line and I'm just standing there waiting. And there's this like younger couple in front of me, probably about 30 years old. And I hear it's like, oh, get back, get back, get back. I'm like looking around, I was like, get back. Like, and I'm looking behind me, what's going on? And they're right there. And I'm like, I look at them like, get back. I'm like, oh, they're talking to me. I'm like, what? Get back. What? You don't have a mask on. And making this big scene. And I'm like, oh my God. And all of a sudden, I went full Patriot Streetfighter. I'm like, pardon my French. Oh, you want a scene, a public scene? I'm going to give you a fucking public scene you're never going to forget. And I just went, are you, and I won't use the words, are you effing kidding me, buddy? I said, look at you and look at her. And I can say this because my mom died from an obesity related disease. I said, look at you and her. Both of you have at least 9 diseases weighing down on your fat asses because of your body weight. And you're worried about a fucking mask. And everybody's like, holy shit. Even the people that work there, they know me. I'm a nice guy. They're like, oh my God, what's happening? The guy's like going hulking out. I'll tell you, they were so they were so shit shocked, and I had smoke pouring out of my ears. And nobody's going to say shit because I'm walking around like this all the time. I'm packing. I got a knife. I've got a weapon on me. I didn't have this tomahawk with me yet, but so nobody ever seemed to give me any shit till that day. And so when
Yeah.
I walked out of there and I calmed down, I'm thinking, man, that worked. I'm going to test drive that again. Right. So a couple days later, I'm in a UPS store. I'm picking up my mail. So I'm coming out of the UPS store. Here comes this, middle-aged dude, probably 60. He's got his ball cap on, his flip-flops and shorts. And as we're passing, he goes out around me and he's mumbling, he's saying some shit. And I get to the door and I turn around like this. I'm like, you okay, buddy? He goes, you don't have a mask on. I said, what? He goes, you don't have a mask on. I said, but you have two masks on. You're twice as stupid as that guy right there. And the other guy's like, well, I didn't even do anything. So I was so pissed. But everybody just like all of a sudden, I'm like, I kind of learned something. When you have stupid people come at you with stupid things, man, give them the full force of you and see what happens. Because at the end of the day, people that are like that, they're cowards. They're freaking cowards.
Yes.
When they're coming at you like wham, one time they're like, it's like the bully. The bully gets jacked up in the jaw after he's hurt so many people and humiliated so many people and has been, ruthless to so many people. One time somebody jacks him up and it shocks the shit out of him. He can't even figure out what happened. Before you know it, this little dude's on him like turn him into hamburger. That's how it happens. You don't have to be physical. But when people are giving you shit, look, you were created the same as they were. This planet is also yours. We're supposed to be loving our brothers and keeper. Now, I know the Matrix has programmed us all to be this way, and I give people
Yep.
latitude for that. But sometimes some people need to be woken up out of their own self-imposed lunacy. And I just happen
Yes.
to, have opportunities to do that. And I'm telling you, what makes it fun, I get to tell these stories and we get to laugh, have a good time at their expense.
Because we know we've got the truth on our side, and
Absolutely.
you've planted the seed along the way because, those folks, those moments, now they look back at it I'm sure they're like, "Well, damn," knowing that you were right all along, at least
Oh, yeah.
planting that seed. Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. You're the best, Scott. Thank you so much for doing this. This was
Uh,
so fun. I just loved hearing about this so much, and I know the audience is gonna love it too. Thank you for spending time with me and
my
sharing your life with the audience, because it was just such a joy, and you're so awesome, and I just appreciate you being here so much.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun hanging out with you. You have amazing energy. You have truly
Oh,
amazing energy. This was a fun interview, not because of me, because of you. You just project this light and joy. That's your power right there. You're
thanks, and, but
fantastic.
I enjoy hearing this in my heart. It just fills me up just to hear your story, each of your stories, because it makes sense as to what we're living through right now, and I'm just so grateful for the time and for people like you. So thank you again, Scott, for being here
It's my
and
pleasure.
telling
And
your story.
I'll say one thing in closing to the people is this. You have no idea the power you have. None of us ever did because they built a machine to contain your light. They feed off of the dark misery and the energy frequency that comes off of your pain, suffering, guilt, fear, worry, all that. It feeds the satanic realm. Stop feeding it. You basically energetically say, go fork yourself. You don't have that
Yes.
power over me. And I'm going to work every day trying to discover the light that is inside of me that God is trying to show us the way to. Because once we discover the human species in the angelic realm has extraordinary power, more than that of even angels, because of the capacities which we have spiritually and energetically, is this very uh, um, unique species. That's why non-terrestrials, as we're learning, they lied about all that stuff too. They just want to, when they're moving through solar systems, they want to try to come close to planet Terra, which is Earth, to get just in range of that species called humans, because
Yeah.
we are so special in our capacities divinely. They just want to be within 1,000,000 miles to know that we were nearby. That's what we are. That's what they store. That's why we are such a threat to this power structure, because when we wake up to it, they have nowhere to go. And that's what people have to understand. I don't care what you look like, how much money you have or you don't have, all of that. Number one is not your fault. I don't care. People say, stupid or lazy, or, you just whatever. Bullshit. The machine was built to facilitate some people to rise and others to fall and never get off their backs, and everything in between.
Mhm.
We all have the same capacity to say, I don't care what they tell me about me. I am going to do my absolute best in my life at all costs. That's what I'm going to do. And that causes you to rise. It's a vibrational, the thought comes from here, and your vibration starts to climb and you stay in that mindset. so many people think like that's why I want them to come out and meet me when we're on tour endlessly. Because once they meet me, again, I told you earlier, they say, he's really just another guy. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to show you folks. It's not Scott McKay, Patriot Street Fighter, carries a gun. He's a badass. He'll say 4Q to anybody. I'll do all those things. But that's just because I finally got pissed off enough to say, I am sick of this effing bullshit that they've done to us and humanity and these poor people in the streets. And I'm sick of it. And now I'm coming. And if you want to kill me, go ahead. Go ahead. You got 22 million pissed off Patriot Street Fighters to deal with if you come that route. I've said that in stages too. So
Exactly.
you are created by a divine authority and a photonic light so powerful that if you can just pull away the scab of all the pain and suffering that these bastards put on us, and you realize how much power you have, man, you'll live a life like you can't imagine. I never had a life worth living until I finally unleashed myself, not caring what anybody said or what anybody thought about me. I don't give a shit what that person, maybe even you, if you don't like me, what you think of me, I could care less, because the only thing that allows me to wake up every day and feel happy, I've ripped the cover off the ball and I let my soul unleash onto the planet. That's it. Nothing special. If you could see my life every day, that's why people put me on this pedestal. I'm like, I'm glad they don't see me operating in my house every day and the things that I do. Like, Jesus, that was a stupid thing to do. Like ooh, like did that? We're humans. We're all the
Yes,
same.
we are.
Unleash
Thank
yourself.
you.
Okay, sweetheart.
Ooh,
Love to
you're
you.
the best. Love, love, love. Thank you so much.
Patriot Street.
Bye.
Much love. Okay.
Bye.